All right, so this is 6.7. We're going to talk about 6.7. We're going to talk about class fields. We talked about
I'm
class
sorry, you're not
methods
doing
versus instance methods. Now I'm going to talk about class fields versus instance fields. All right, so I just decided to make a car object. Now, what are some instance fields for the car object? So maybe we could do something like string make. We could do something like, so that could be like, make could be like a BMW, it could be a Ferrari, it could be a Honda, right? So that's the string make. We could have int horsepower. What else could we have? Yep. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you. Good point. So I'm just making a car object for instance fields here. So we've got these two. Let's do one more. We could probably, like if we were in a video game, we could probably have, maybe 30 or 50 different instance fields that define a car. Let's do one more. What should we do? Price? You can do price. Sure. Double price. All these cars have different values. Okay. So now, because we're going to test it as the secondary programmer here, let's actually just make a constructor for ease. So public car, you guys remember how to do all of this, right? For your lab, for your quiz on Friday. So public car, and then we've got string make, int horsepower, and double price. Now since we call them the same thing, then we should say this dot make gets make, and this dot horsepower gets horsepower, and this dot price gets price. And hopefully this stuff is all very easy to you because it'll save you time on the quiz. You'll have to make constructors. David, whisper. So we've got our constructor, and there we have it. Now, if I make, so let's compile this and save it. And then we can hit the interactions panel. Now let's make some cars. Who's got a car? Kevin car equals new car. And Kevin, what do you got?
RAV4, Toyota RAV4.
Toyota. I don't know how to spell Toyota. Toyota RAV4. How many horsepower?
All of the horsepower.
Let's say 150. And the price?
30 cents. I think it's like 20 grand, maybe. Maybe a little more.
It's got to be more than that now, I think. Probably I'll say 35,000. All right, so now we've got Kevin car. It's got all of that information in it. We don't have a two-string method. Then we have, so we'll just kind of like, I'll just show you without the two-string method. And then let's say we've got Luca car. Luca's got what?
Pontiac Firebird.
Is that what you want?
I'd like a car that works.
Firebird's a great car. You watch Smokey and the Bandit? Great movie.
And that's about, let's say, 48,000? I have no idea. It's an old car, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got two cars now. And so why do we call these instance fields? Why do we call them instance fields? So if I go Kevin car dot, let's say, make, I get Toyota RAV4. If I go Luca car dot make, I get Pontiac Firebird. Notice that they're both the same variable, make, right? Make is the same variable, but they have their own values, right? And that's why we call them instance fields. They have their own values. Now, if I change, let's say I change Luca car dot horsepower to say 500. He upgraded the engine. And does that change Kevin car horsepower? No, didn't change Kevin car's horsepower because they are different instances and these are separate instance fields. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to put static. I'm going to talk about class fields. And class fields are when we put static in front. So that word static now, hopefully you understand it because we talked about it with class methods. Now we're talking about it with class fields. So if you throw that word static in front of any variable, then it becomes a class field. Class fields mean it's like a global variable that is shared amongst all instances. So what is some variable that would be shared amongst all things, all cars? Wheels, they could all be 4, but then would I need a variable for that if they're all 4? So what's something that changes maybe day to day that would be shared amongst all cars?
Gas price?
Yeah, like a gas price, right? So that's a good one. So static double, let's say gas price, right? Now you can initialize that here if you want as well. I think the other day it was 207 the last time I checked, which is crazy. So $2.07, so 2.07. So you can initialize it there if you want. You can initialize it in the constructor, but you should be careful initializing it in the constructor. So let's initialize it in the constructor so we can see what could go wrong with that. Now, by putting the word static in there, what have we done? Notice it's different than the instance field. So this is the key point of the lesson here. So I'm going to compile that now. Let's go back to interactions. And let's make our cars again. So Luca car. And Kevin car. And so now, if I go Luca car dot gas price, what do I get? 2.07, right? Good. I get 2.07. If I go Kevin car dot gas price, what do I get? 2.07. Now, what if I change Kevin car dot gas price to, let's say it goes down a little bit, 2.01. So the gas price went down the next day. Okay, so I do that. Now, what is Luca car dot gas price? 2.01. So you see the difference between a class field and an instance field is that this class field is shared amongst all instances of that class. Okay, so as opposed to, now these are, notice I use the new keyword for both of these. This is not the same as Luca car and Kevin car pointing at the same object. They are not pointing at the same object. They are pointing at their own objects, but they still share this class field. Every instance would share that class field. Yes, Luca?
So do you always have to point to or use a object that you've already made to change that the static or the class a value of the class field?
The class field. Yeah, so that's a really good question. In fact, that's actually the bad way of doing it, programming style wise, at least in my opinion. So, Java allows you to do it. But because it's a class field, it's better to use the class name. So car.gasPrice. Because it doesn't belong to any one instance. So it kind of feels weird to go Kevin car.gasPrice and then, Luca car.gasPrice. Because it's shared, we should use the class name to access it. So now let's say the gas price goes up a little bit. So now it's 2.05. And again, that would change for all of them. So Kevin car.gas price would also be 2.05. Luca car and any other car that I made, would change as well. Does that make sense? So class fields are just about shared fields that are shared amongst all instances of it. So they're still variables because they can change, right? I mean, if you throw something like final in there, then it becomes a constant and it doesn't change, right? So final means it doesn't change. Static means it's a class field, so that it's still a variable that can change, but whenever it does change, it changes for all instances. Make sense? Whereas these fields are independent of one another for each instance. See the difference? Everybody understand that? Yeah. Questions? Now, let's make a new car. Car, who wants a car? Scott car. Equals new car. Scott, what do you got? What's that?
Acura RDX.
Acura RDX. You like your SUVs there, eh?
The RAV4 and the Acura with cars that I have. My dad's
Nice. That's a nice car. You know your cars. Okay, and then horsepower, let's say 200. I don't know.
I think it's 180.
180. And the price of the Acura RDX is pretty expensive, isn't it? 50,000.
I would have thought maybe.
Brand new, probably. All right, so there's Scott car. All right, now, what's car.gas price? What's car.gas price? 2.05, right? Right? Right?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Oh.
How did that happen?
Oh, is it because car was created after it was changed? So
Yeah, we put it in the constructor. So that's why I wanted to make that point about be careful about initializing some fields, especially class fields in the constructor. You can, but then anytime you make a car or that new object, anytime you instantiate, so here we're instantiating, using that constructor, instantiating means making a new instance, using that constructor, then you know that class field gets reset for all of them. So you might want to do this instead. If you want to initialize it at the beginning, you can do that, and then don't put it in here. And then every time you make a constructor, it's make a new one, it's not automatically changed. Does that make sense? So just a subtle thing there. Questions about class fields? 6.7? All right, do 6.7 homework.